It's now my pleasure to welcome our guest speaker. And now he told me not to go on too long with introducing him because he says he's going to do it himself. So it's a great honour and a great privilege for me to ask you to join me in welcoming Donard Gaynor.
Thank you, Dr. Summers, for that very kind introduction. And may I say what a pleasure it is to be here tonight and to have the opportunity to share some thoughts with a group that I've long been associated with, but never imagined I would address in a forum like this. At the outset, I want to acknowledge the warm welcome and physical presence of you, Dr. Summers, and your lovely wife, Dr. Deirdre Summers, and of course, Executive Directors Roddy Feely and David O'Sullivan, both of whom have gone out of their way to make the arrangements for tonight and make them as comfortable as possible for me. I also want to acknowledge again my very close friend, longtime council board member Marie O'Connor of PwC, whose guest I've been at this event in Ireland many times. And personally, I'm also very pleased that some members of my family have made the trip from various parts of Ireland tonight. They're all over there at table 4, so please be good over there. They are my brother Desmond and his lovely wife Kavina from Sligo, and my cousin Colette Phelan Lynch and her charming husband Pat from Cork, and my cousin John Gaynor, who is a lecturer in business and accounting at the IT in Sligo, and he's here tonight at their behest. When their president, Professor Terry Scott, heard about this invitation, she immediately reached out for a meeting which we had in Dublin a few weeks ago, and in which we had a very stimulating conversation on the current state of third-level education in Ireland, the recently articulated strategic plan adopted by the government on the way forward, and her enthusiasm for the very positive role that IT Sligo, she and her faculty, will play in its implementation. Later this year, I plan to visit the now 6,000-plus student campus, which has changed radically from the days when I attended in the mid-70s. Now, I want you to know that I solicited and received a lot of advice on this speech tonight. While all of it was humorous, there was a definite theme to it. A friend who I'll describe as an amateur astronomer told me that my speech should be like a comet, dazzling, eye-opening, and over before you know it. Another friend who must have ambition to be an amateur comedian counseled that I try not to speak for too long, in that it was best to leave my audience before they leave me. And finally, my pastor, Father John, who gives a homily every Sunday, told me my job was to talk and yours is to listen. Hopefully I finish mine before you finish yours. So I get the theme. Onward. If you were unfortunate enough to have to plow through that official bio, and you just heard it again, you can skip to the bathroom now for a few minutes. I was born in 1956 in Sligo and spent my earlier years there and before I moved to the United States in 1978. I was educated at Summerhill College in Sligo, where I plan to attend my 40th reunion later this year, and the aforementioned IT Sligo, where I studied to become a chartered accountant. I'm the old breed of chartered accountant, having served as an articled clerk and a trainee under training contract at a firm in Sligo then known as Hamilton, and Raftery. And I vividly recall my first salary as £1.50 a week, and then the largest ever career-long percentage increase I received to £4.80 per week a year later as the Institute began much-needed reform of the training process. I began my career in the United States with PwC in '78 in their New York office, where I became a partner and stayed for 15 years. I served a lot of very big-name clients in a broadly defined consumer practice, and I spent much of my time there as a partner on the beverage alcohol entity called Seagram. Because of that company's penchant for acquisitions, some $48 billion during my association with them, I truly learned what Le Carre was truly right when he said, "A desk is a dangerous place from which to view the world." I was recruited to Seagram in '92, and I've adopted that line as my personal motto ever since. My experience there embraced a number of functions, but I finally became the CFO of the Seagram Spirits Group. And in 2001, Seagram was acquired by Vivendi because of its mid-90s foray into entertainment. And the Spirits Group was sold to, or effectively broken up by, a partnership between Diageo and Pernod Ricard. Coincidentally, the number 1 and 2 companies in the beverage spirit place today. I believe both would acknowledge the transformative role that that deal played in establishing their future superiority. Wanting again to do something a little different, I joined Beam, which was then a subsidiary of a company called Fortune Brands, in 2003 as president of International, formed the partnership with Pernod Ricard in 2004, and acquired Allied Domecq, which confirmed their ambition as a global player and gave us a real international business. I went on to build up the international portfolio, and then Fortune decided to break up in 2010, and I became Senior Vice President of Strategy and Corporate Development in 2011 to play a leadership role in our coming out as a standalone public company, using much of what I had done for many of the past years to forge new partnerships and extend our business into emerging markets. I was firmly of the view since 2008 that Beam needed to be an Irish whiskey. And for me at least, the crowning achievement of my career with Beam was to acquire the Cooley Whiskey Company in late 2011 and early 2012. To say that negotiating with John Teeling was something I will always recall with enormous respect and pleasure would completely understate how I truly feel about John, his family, his directors, and the wonderful people that I met at Cooley and Kilbeggan. I have assured them that whiskey is native to Beam and their future is in good hands, and I'm delighted that Willie McCarter is here tonight. John phoned me today. He told me at an AGM in London with a cantankerous shareholder, so he couldn't come. But talk to me later for some of the best stories that you'll ever hear on that deal. And by the way, if half of you here tonight tell me you attended John's lectures at UCD, I won't be surprised. So after that, and with still much to do in terms of some personal goals and agenda, I did retire in March of 2012. And while that was unexpected at Beam and resulted in my not getting out until December 2012, I have now left it behind and launched onto some new ventures. And these include the non-executive directorships in Glanbia and H&K. I think there's enormous opportunity to provide them with a US perspective at board level and to share my experience in extending, as they extend into emerging markets. I'm also quite impressed with the standard of corporate governance in Ireland. I guess some of that was the result of some recent painful lessons. I have a deep commitment to give back, and so I am involved with a variety of volunteer efforts with my church at home, with the board of the high school which educated my son, with a quasi-governmental entity called Cooperation Ireland in the USA, set up to continue the work of reconciliation among the two communities in the wake of the peace process, and with my favorite charity of all, and one with which I've been associated for 25 years, the Children's Medical Research Foundation, which of course supports the work and research at the Children's Hospital in Crumlin. If I ever needed reaffirmation of the need to continue in that cause, then the recent poignant but brilliantly articulate efforts put forth by 16-year-old Donald Walsh prior to his untimely death was all that was needed, and indeed has become the catalyst for rejuvenating our board in the United States. So I'm busy and pretty happy. I've told you all this for a reason, because I want to spend the remainder of my time with you on two topics: the importance of reinvention in the context of the current economic climate and outlook, and a few personal reflections on leadership and confidence. The aforementioned Mr. Le Carre is often quoted as saying that he is still making order out of chaos by reinvention. And moreover, Warren Bennis, a famous American scholar, organizational consultant, and pioneer in contemporary leadership studies, has said that people who cannot invent and reinvent themselves must be content with borrowed postures, second-hand ideas, and fitting in instead of standing out. One of the reasons I talked about myself was that I truly believe that my life and career have been around a theme of reinvention. I also believe that change begets reinvention, and Ireland certainly is in the midst of massive, painful, but necessary change. And I believe that getting it right on reinvention will be the reason people will talk about what my friend and fellow Glanbia director Paul Harron likes to call the era of the Celtic phoenix rising to replace the tiger. Consider for context the world in which Ireland and the USA compete. I recently watched an amazing 5-minute video, updated annually and available on YouTube, called Did You Know? Among its many facts are the following. The top 10 in-demand jobs in the United States in 2010 did not exist in 2006. The US Department of Labor estimates that today's learners, people in school, will have between 10 and 14 jobs by the time they're 38. There are 31 billion Google searches every month. In 2006, there were 2.7 billion. The first commercial text message was sent in 1992. Today, the total sent and received text every day exceeds the population of the planet, which is 7 billion, and I Googled it. Revenue from iPhone and the iPad combine for 72% of Apple's revenues today. Neither product existed 5 years ago. So we are currently preparing students for jobs that don't exist, using technologies that have not been invented to solve problems that we don't even know are problems yet. And finally, in the 5 minutes that it takes to watch that video, 67 babies will be born in the United States, 274 in China, and 395 in India. If, like me, you believe that that is a compelling agenda for change with inherent opportunity for both of our economies to thrive, then I suggest reinvention is a must, and in many ways, Ireland and the United States have shown the will and the ability to do it. Faced with much the same dire consequences in the wake of the 2008 world financial meltdown, Ireland embraced a painful series of remedies that made words such as troika and NAMA commonplace, that partly disassembled, often painfully, a very generous social welfare system, that increased taxes, especially personal taxes, painfully to pay for what has been left intact, and that has seen reputations in tatters, insolvency expertise replace business entrepreneurship, and left unfinished housing estates, unfinished office developments, and a distinct doldrum of lack of confidence in its wake. And yet, Ireland isn't Spain, it isn't Italy, it isn't Portugal, and frankly, it isn't France or, God forbid, Cyprus. No, Ireland is meeting its obligations, has returned to the world bond markets, is reinventing its economy on some very important solid pillars, and while there's much pain around the renewal of immigration and the difficulty of underwater mortgages and the scourge of unemployment, there are some very positive signs that things may be turning around. Certainly, outside experts are commenting favorably on Ireland, while despairing of ever solving the mess on the continent. Certainly, places like Japan and the United States are finally seeing shoots of growth after years of decline. And certainly, emerging markets are still growing, albeit at lesser rates than before, and providing markets for other companies' exports, or the country's exports. As I wrote these words, the very reassuring comments from two eminently successful Americans ran home. Dale Carnegie advised that you must develop success from failures. Discouragement and failure are two of the surest stepping stones to success. And none other than Walt Disney said the best way to get started is to quit talking and start doing. I suggest that Ireland is indeed showing the world that it has learned from failures and discouragement, and that was so evident and is so evident, unfortunately, still in the national psyche, but that it needs to become a stepping stone to future success rather than slide into the abyss of doom and gloom. And I compliment the people and the leaders who took Disney's advice to heart and are just getting on with it. It's early days with ups and downs, but the news appears to get better and better as a result. Building on what I have just said, I'd like to bring my comments tonight to a close by sharing some personal reflections on leadership and confidence. If there are two things that we need to rev up going forward, these get my vote. Let's step back and go back to the term I used earlier, the rise of the phoenix. Why should we believe? Well, I'm going to suggest several reasons. The huge investments that Ireland, with some assistance from the EU, has made in its physical and digital technological infrastructure are all intact. Believe me, and I never thought I would say this, but we would kill in parts of the US for your road infrastructure. That represents a monumental challenge for the United States going forward. You have it, companies recognize it, and investment is happening through significant foreign direct investment. Ireland has for several decades boasted that it has a well-educated workforce. I know immigration has been a source of deep anguish, but I meet people who left in far-flung corners of places like Sydney and Shanghai or Bangalore, New York, London, and Tokyo, and they want and intend to return. And Ireland will benefit massively from the experiences they have gained and their knowledge of world markets that they will bring back with them. Talking to Professor Scott, my family who are deeply involved in education, business people who experience the depth of Irish talent firsthand, and as I think about the strategies for investment in third and fourth level PhD education, I believe that Ireland will attract high-paying jobs and investment in a range of next-generation jobs and research that will well reward this focus. What can't be good about that? Yeats said it well when he said that education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. That fire burns brightly in Ireland and is sustainable long into the future. There are some wonderful unclaimed gems within the Irish economy, and I predict that they will have a major impact going forward. Finally, but possibly most important, is Ireland's business-friendly tax environment. Now, don't let the United States' sorry state of being the world leader in the rate of corporate tax be the hammer to deflect attention of that glaring idiocy and punish your ingenuity in coming up with a tax regime that promotes investment, creates jobs, and results in nice returns to the exchequer. Equally, don't take on trying to solve the inequities that arise from different tax regimes and structures globally. The market ultimately sorts all that out. In saying this, I do believe that your personal income tax rates are too high and act as a disincentive to high-paying executive roles here. There is an opportunity for rebalancing, notwithstanding more of the same from those who delight in perpetuating the begrudgery factor. And don't worry, that's not something new. Yeats spoke of it when he quipped, being Irish, he had an abiding sense of tragedy which sustained him through temporary periods of joy. So perhaps I can leave you this evening with a few pearls of wisdom that others have offered on the one essential that I believe must come to the fore if Ireland is to accelerate its rise from the ashes: confidence. Three things come to mind. In his wonderfully poignant book, Tuesdays with Maury, the author Mitch Albom advises you to accept who you are and revel in it. Pablo Picasso famously revealed that, when I was a child, my mother said, if you become a soldier, you will be a general. If you become a monk, you will be the Pope. Instead, I became a painter and wound up as Picasso. And finally, Sophia Loren stated confidently that sex appeal is 50% of what you've got and 50% of what people think you've got. Ireland has what it takes. This council has witnessed great achievements in the past and stands ready to do so again. Tonight, it's fitting that we celebrate the unique and abiding friendship that is de rigueur between our two nations. It is fitting that we reflect on the failures and discouragement, but look with confidence to re-emergent success. And it is fitting that leaders from both sides of the ocean gather and renew their commitment to leading through doing. I'm going to take Yeats at his word for the rest of the evening and acknowledge that there are no strangers here in this room, only friends I haven't met. And I look forward to meeting you all. Thank you very much for listening. Gura Mila Maigat.